This will be my preview video for Outlander Season 7, Episode 14. As always, if you are looking to avoid spoilers from the books or the show, please do keep on scrolling. Just a preface, I get asked this a lot, where do I get this footage from? If you are watching on the Stars app, after the credits of each episode, there is a preview for the next week's episode. So that is where a lot of these screen grabs are coming from. Now, the title for this episode is going to be called You Dinna Get Used to It, and it is written by Diana herself. Now, I think the title is a callback to the books. There's a chapter in Written in My Own Heart's Blood where Ian talks about the question of whether or not you could ever get used to taking the life of another person and how you dinna get used to it. First, we see Jamie in his whole general uniform here. We learned in episode 13 that him and Ian are both going to be leaving a few days after Rachel and Ian's wedding. So this is presumably later in that week when they do finally leave. Now, as you'll recall, he was given the rank of general by George Washington in episode 12, I believe. And you can see him acting that out here. These are his men. Now, in the books, Lord John swears an allegiance to the American militia, and in the scene in the books when Jamie is inspecting his troops, Claire actually spots Lord John with Germain, who is Marcelly and Fergus's eldest son, in the crowd, and Gray surrenders to Jamie and is brought to Jamie's tent. So I'm hoping that happens in this episode. After that, Claire treats his eye, and Percy Beauchamp shows up again. I have touched upon Percy a few different times. He shows up frequently in the Lord John Grey novellas. He is very curious about Fergus and his parentage, and is someone who ends up becoming quite important in Lord John's storyline moving forward. So curious if we are going to see Percy show up here as well. Here's another shot of Jamie inspecting his men. He also says that he has 300 men under his command, that he all wants them to return home. Then we cut to this clip where the American flag is being patched together, and Claire's voice saying, "A nation without a flag is like a furnace without a fire." We can see she's seated at a dinner table here with a man in uniform. Then we get a glimpse of a camp here. I believe this is William. In this episode, I expect to see him become an aide-de-camp to General Clinton here, as we see him roll up on his horse. It's also around this time that Jane and her younger sister Fanny show up and ask William for his protection, so I'm hoping that we get to see that in this episode as well. We also have an overlay of Captain Richardson's voice here telling William that the rebels will not quit, but war is long. And then we see Bree driving in her car. We left her where she left the kids with Fiona and her husband and was going to have the locks changed on her house. And we see her loading her shotgun and saying it's time for a new plan. Then we get this quick shot of George Washington. He is saying the battle is close upon us. And we can see Ian, he is a scout looking onto the British camp here. And he's in his full regalia, which I love to see him in, especially after this last episode where he's been in more civilian clothes. We see this van spinning out in front of Lallybroch, which I think is going to be finally the reveal of all of the people that Rob Cameron has been working with, and hopefully an explainer of the overarching storyline revolving around Bree at this point, because they have not touched upon that quite yet in the show. Immediately after this, there's a very quick shot of someone taking a drink and sliding it across the table. There's a lot of things that will be coming up in the Battle of Monmouth. I really can't say that word. Monmouth. And I don't know if they're just going to plant the seeds of those in this next episode or if we're going to see any of them come to fruition. But Captain Richardson is once again up to some shady stuff with William. So I'm wondering if maybe that quick scene has something to do with that, or how they're going to explain that. It could also be from the dinner that we see Claire sitting at the table for. Then we see Jamie and Claire together. Obviously, they are in a tent with one another, preparing for battle. We get a scene of someone saying fire and a ring of gunshots going off. And then we cut to William, who is in Captain Richardson's tent, saying, "I will not fail you again." Now, there are a lot of people involved in upcoming plot that we haven't seen yet. There are characters that I don't know if they're even going to have them in the show, or mention them off screen and then do explainers, but there's a lot of upcoming plot in the books that I really don't know if they're going to include or skip over or rework in the show. So for the most part, I kind of have a general idea of what is to come, and we're entering territory now that I'm not 100% sure what's to come because the show has taken so much liberty in rewriting the original text. But what I can say is that the events of the upcoming battle are going to be important, significant. Some of it I believe they could use as the end of the season, but I do want to reiterate that they did not get a green light for season 8 of Outlander until pretty far in the game, so they did have to rework some of the story that they wrote because they originally thought they might have to end the whole show in season 7. So we are just cruising on through a lot of storyline here, and I would imagine they did change some of it so that they have a little more room to breathe with some of these plot points. But again, that means that I'm really unclear of how they're going to navigate moving forward, which makes it both exciting and slightly frustrating for me. But let me know your thoughts in the comments about what you think of all these little Easter eggs that I found in this trailer and your thoughts on what could happen in this episode.